And it says you're recording on my end.
Let's do this. Top tweets from around the world. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Dave Breckenridge, managing editor of the Journal. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, David.
How you doing?
I'm all right. It's I'm looking forward to the weather warming up to get porch beers outside. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Who knows? I feel cooped up. Yourself? Are you all cooped up in your place?
I am so sick of this weather. It's finally sunny out, but I had kind of a stereotypical self-isolation moment here, Dave. I was making bread, which everyone seems to be doing, even I'm doing, and I found it. But of course, klutz that I am, I put in 2 tablespoons of yeast instead of 2 teaspoons of yeast. So then I had to try to estimate and scoop it out. So we'll see if that works or not. So as part of my research on just staying up to date with coronavirus, I'm doing unending kind of research around the web. I'm on the computer all the time, and I'm on Twitter a lot looking at what people are saying from around the world. And it's really fascinating because there's tweets coming in from India, from China, from Taiwan, from every country in the world, often in English. And what I'm doing is trying to pick some of the most interesting ones from around the world. Unfortunately, a lot of them are like from the United States and are like so focused on the ugly political battle around coronavirus in the States because of Trump. And I have some of those in there as well. But I try to get like a variety of tweets from around the world, kind of summing up the mood of the times. What's being said around the world? What's being discussed around the world on this outbreak? And what we're going to try to do on a daily basis is I'm going to talk to you or maybe some other people at the Journal as well about what's your favorite tweet, most interesting tweet that you found today, and I'll do the same. So let's start with you, Dave, in terms of what you found really interesting on the list that I compiled. What's your top tweet?
Well, it's funny. You mentioned Donald Trump and the ugly political thing going on. There were a couple tweets that you pulled that you put them back to back, which was really handy because it is interesting. So, we're in the middle of the pandemic. We're in the middle of the health system response to this virus. But as the economy is shut down, we are in a position where people are wondering what's going to happen with the economy. And so you have 2 tweets in here that I found really interesting, and they go along really well together. The first one is from President Donald Trump. I'm not going to try my best Alec Baldwin impression, but he says, once we open up our great country, because open up our great country is in all caps, and it will be sooner rather than later the horror of the invisible enemy, except for those that sadly lost a family member or friend, must be quickly forgotten. Our economy will boom, perhaps like never before. It's very Trumpian, very Trump-like, all caps, and not the best structure, grammatic, like it's all kind of jammed together. And then right following that, you have a tweet from CTV host Evan Solomon, who is obviously listening to the Justin Trudeau press briefings. And he says, Justin Trudeau says, quote, our economy will come roaring back after the crisis. So very similar messages from the US president and Canada's prime minister on, once everything gets reopened and once everyone's back to work, the economy will kickstart itself, which I'm sure is true that, once our countries are allowed to reopen and people are allowed to find some semblance of normalcy in their lives, the economy will start to recover. However, and this is something, I'm going to tie this to Jason Kenney. I'm going to try and be as brief as I can because Alberta Premier Jason Kenney spoke, I forget what day of the week it is today. It's Wednesday. So he spoke Tuesday night about the forthcoming crisis, modeling for cases of COVID-19, what this all means for the provincial bottom line. And earlier in the day, he was talking about unemployment numbers. And he said that as many as 25% unemployment in Alberta. Once the economy gets going again, not all of those 25% are going to be back to work. There's going to be, I think, and I'm not trying to be a doomsayer. Our economy could come roaring back, but I'm starting to wonder, like, what is the expected timeline for once we get back to normal? If they're predicting really high unemployment, how quickly do some of these people get their jobs back? You're seeing businesses go out of business. it kind of caught my attention because I appreciate the optimism. Again, very different styles from Trump and Trudeau, but it makes me wonder what their expectation of a timeline is, and even what role the government has to play in that. So that's kind of what jumped out to me, is that world leaders are starting to talk optimistically, but what is the realistic optimistic projection here?
You know, Trump always talks this way about the economy, right? Since word go, he's always treated it like a trying to change our psychology into positive thinking about the economy. It's going to go, it's going to take off. Mm-hmm. He's been saying that, like, we're going to have it's going to be the best ever. We're going to have the best ever economy. He's been saying that from word go to try to, because he believes in positive thinking. I mean, I understand that when he was a kid, his minister at his church was, I think it was the Power of Positive Thinking guy, Norman Vincent Peale, was his actual church minister that he heard every Sunday. So this is Trump's manna. Interesting, though, for me to hear. I don't think I've ever heard that from Trudeau, a line like that from Justin Trudeau. And I could be wrong about that. Maybe you want to correct me, but I don't think I've ever heard him kind of adopt that kind of, it just hit me like he's now adopting the Trump-like message that this is going to come roaring back. And listen, I hope they're both right. And I do think a lot of it has to do with psychology, but it also has to do with we like faith in a certain ideas. Like, the economy's taken off because of certain things: free trade, global trade, free markets. And are those things how durable are those things going to be in the face of this crisis? And that's something that we don't know.
Yeah.
Let's go to my, it's going to be 2 tweets in a row, linked tweets as well. And mine speak to something that we're all facing, and that's the reliability of information on the internet right now. And I've been caught a few times getting over enthusiastic about this, that, or other thing, or overly pessimistic about this, that, or the other thing in terms of this outbreak, and firing something off on Twitter and facing justified criticism because I said something that was too not not wise, unwise. Okay. So, but it's a problem because you see these things and you think, well, this is probably true. So I read CNN from Britain put out a story this morning with a tweet. Cat owners who are self-isolating or have COVID-19. Oh, just wait a second here. Okay, their tweet is: cat owners who are self-isolating or have COVID-19 symptoms should consider keeping their pet indoors to stop them carrying the virus on their fur, a veterinary body has advised. And then a moment later, the British Veterinary Association puts out, contrary to some news reports this morning, we're not advising that all cats be kept indoors during the COVID-19 pandemic. Only cats from infected or self-isolating households should be kept indoors as a precaution if possible. Now, it turns out, actually, when I read the CNN tweet, I read it incorrectly. I read it, we can't put our cat out anymore. I missed the part where they had added in that part. So I was thinking already, what am I going to tell my wife? We can't put our cats outdoor anymore. So this was a case of me just reading part of the tweet and not understanding it. But apparently the British Veterinary Association, some people were distorting the message and just putting out, well, you can't. The message that got out to the public essentially was, you can't put your cat outdoors anymore. So the British Veterinary Association had to respond to that and correct it. So I myself was confused by this all, and it just, I think, speaks to how easily it is to be to misinterpret the news and also to misreport the news, as the British Veterinary Association were saying happened today.
Well, I find it interesting that the idea around pets and animals that has kind of come out, kind of dribs and drabs, how are people dealing with pets? And there is talk about the virus being able to live in your hair or on animal fur. And so you don't want people who you don't know petting your dog if you're out for a walk. A, they're getting too close to you, and B, are they sick and could they put COVID-19 on your dog? And as far as we know, dogs can't catch the virus, but could the dog transmit the virus to you, which is kind of a frightening thought. The one that talking about cats and the internet and COVID-19, the one that I thought was the most strange, and I was convinced it was fake, was that the tiger at the Bronx Zoo had COVID-19. And there was reports of it, and I saw it, and I was like, no. But then I kept seeing it in more and more news reports. I don't know if it's been debunked yet, but I kept seeing that how does a tiger, I assume obviously that one of the handlers of the tiger has COVID-19 and passed it to the tiger.
That
But
is a true story now, isn't it not?
no,
That
I'm just I'm looking that up on my phone right now. So forgive me while I look down.
I think it's true. Okay, so here's the thing with I've been reading these two CNN and British veterinary tweets again. It's kind of confusing because this is also here's another complicating fact in all of these tweets. This is coming from another country, from England, right? From Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they like? They say if you're in self isolation, you should not put your cat outside. Well, essentially, everyone in Canada, and my understanding is we are now all in self isolation. Does it mean anything different in England? That so essentially they're saying if this is what the British Veterinary Association is saying, everyone keep your cat indoors.
Mm-hmm.
From my reading of it, unless self isolation means something different in England than it means here.
Yeah.
Maybe it means mandatory quarantine over in England.
Possibly.
Because
Like if you're able to go out to work, then you're able to put your cat out, I guess.
I don't know, Dave. Anyway, I think there's a real issue with trying to understand all of this information, trying to figure it out and apply it to ourselves. For instance, here's another example of this. There was a lot of stir recently about nursing homes and seniors homes.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I think Andre Picard of the Globe and Mail was, talking about I think he tweeted like if you have a parent or grandparent in a senior's home, take them out right now. I think that was his advice to everybody. But he was speaking, that went out across Canada, but there was a real crisis in Ontario and
No,
Quebec.
there still is a crisis in Ontario with these.
There
with nursing
still
homes,
is,
right?
but we haven't had that in Edmonton. But what the impact in our household was like, okay, we had this, we were like for the next 2 days, we were like, okay, should we take our parents out? What should we do? What precaution? Like it really alerted us to the problem, and when we started to think about precautions and such. But he was referring specifically to a really huge problem in Ontario and Quebec, which really isn't yet, and hopefully will never be a problem in Edmonton, Alberta. I mean, I think there's one, maybe two homes that have been impacted at all, but largely we've been successful here. So again, you can take information which is there's a crisis in this place and then apply it to your own place, and that can also be misleading. So
yeah, it's strange times, and it is one of those things that you're right that it's a global pandemic. There's information that is applicable everywhere, and then there's information that's applicable country by country, and information that's applicable province by province and city by city, and you kind of have to wade through what is right in our area and what's right elsewhere, what holds true here and not elsewhere. And I will say, I looked up the Bronx Zoo thing is true. and other zoos are taking precautions with their big cats now that it's been confirmed the Bronx Zoo's tiger tested positive with COVID-19.
Alrighty, well, let's leave it there. Thanks for talking today.
No worries, David. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
I'll just stop.